Hello, and hello. Welcome to another Win Daily Show. My name is Michael Brazil. I got my man Sian Najad here with me. I got my man Joel Schreck here with me, and we are talking Sanderson Farms Championship. Should be a good one. Some real golfers this time. Two of our favorites. We'll get to them a little bit later. I know both of them are there. So we're going to get one of those lineups again, Joel. One of those lineups. But, gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? Sia, you first. How are you tonight, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm lamenting something from last show. So if you remember when we were going over the 6,000 range, before I got to the golfers I liked, I prefaced it with saying, and we can go back and like check the tape. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I was like, I really like Hudson Swafford at this price, but I looked at his recent form. This is what I actually said last week. I looked at his recent form and it just doesn't look that good. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and avoid him. And then I named like four other players in the 6K range, which were fine players to recommend ultimately. But I'm so mad at myself because I think the lesson in that is, don't always rely, whether it's recent stats or year-long stats or whatever you're looking at. Like sometimes if a guy like Hudson Swafford is 6,700 in a super weak field, like go ahead and take a shot, whether it's an outright bet or a top 10 bet or, a few DFS shares. I mean, I didn't have any of them because I had basically looked at him, liked him, but then crossed him off the list. So I'm a little disappointed about that. Our picks were great last week. The only one that failed us was the super chalky one, Will Gordon. And because he was chalky, we didn't have a ton of shares of him. I know that Chris Kirk failed me a little bit, but on to the new tournament. I'm super psyched about it.
I love it. Yeah, it happens, man. It happens. We can't be perfect all the time. We can't look like your hair all the time. See, it's pretty difficult there. Joel, how about you? Did you have fun playing a little, what was it? The Corrales Punta Cana Resort and Club Championship?
Yeah, I won a little bit of money last week. I didn't have a huge week, but I had a lot of fun. I mean, what's fun about DraftKings is like when your plays that were kind of out of left field hit, you're like, oh yeah, I hit him. I was on, so I was just enjoying hitting some out of left field plays last week. But just to piggyback a little bit on what Sia is saying, one thing that I subscribe to when building up, there's no such thing in DFS in any sport as a perfect formula, right? There's no such thing as like if you just follow this every time it's going to work. Like, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's a mix, right? So like, I'm sure the winning field most of the time is a mix of guys who were in good form going into that tournament and guys who weren't that kind of came up. And so you just got to be, when you're building your lineups, be prepared to not be too focused on one strategy and just build only based on that and be able to kind of mix in different people with different strategies and things like that.
Of course. And when we are going to be talking over this, again, the Sanderson Farms Championship, we're talking about it from a GPP perspective. Of course, you have to understand what tournaments you're selecting, what you're getting into, and how you're getting into them. A single entry is going to be different than a 3 max, than a 20 max, than a 150. So just take under, what we're saying in the understanding that there's GPP connotations for that. But also, if you have specific questions on specific tournaments or plays or where you're going, windailysports.com/chat, 7 days for free in our expert Discord chat. One cool thing about that, it's not just PGA, which we've been crushing. It's also NFL, which I honestly think we have 4 5-figure wins so far. Jason hit for 25K. Sia is like nonstop winning money. Nick, I think, already has 2 5-figure days. A couple other people have 5-figure days. Like, we're not messing around. And then we have subs cashing for 4 figures. Subs. I apologize. Family members cashing for 4 figures on a routine basis at this point, and it is so much fun. So windailysports.com/chat. Come hang out with us for a little while. It's not just PGA. It's for NFL. It's for the little bit of NBA that's left. It's for the MLB playoffs, which are going on right now. God damn it, Shane Bieber. But we will move forward. See, I do have to bring up one thing before we move on. And I'm excited to see what it is this week, but buddy, you are 0-2 for breaking news at this point.
Oh, I know.
Last week it was a small sample size. I was like, well, you can't really break news and be wrong, but I'll give it to you. You then broke more news on the show this past week. Didn't really work out. Do you have more breaking news? Because I will put money on it, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But I'm
going to have more breaking news for sure. Okay. And for the record, my breaking news last week for people who need to play catch up.
For the record, that is 0-2 currently. Just need to put the actual record out there. But please continue.
Correct. I had my breaking news was taking like a 80-1 shot. And I basically said he is going to be your first round leader. And it was Kyle Stanley. And the leader was -7 and Kyle Stanley was -5. So you could say from your perspective, I'm 0-2 because he wasn't the first round leader. However, there are some people that would say, well, it's true he wasn't first round leader. But what is also true is that Sia's breaking news gave me a solid sweat Thursday afternoon. And it's not worth any dollars. But from an entertainment perspective, if you were to put $10 on Kyle Stanley to be first round leader, which would have paid, I can't remember, like $700, you're welcome for the sweat.
Well, let me defend you a little bit here, because I'll also say this. If we came on here on a show like this and we're basically judged off of taking 80 to 1 shot guys on our record.
No. We are not judged on that. We are absolutely not judged on that. We are judged on breaking news that is so far 0-2. Believe me, I put dollars every single one of the bets you guys give me. I put $1 on all of them. Are you kidding me? I think I've won one. Like, it's not a big deal. It's just, I feel like when you throw out a term like breaking news, I mean, the confidence, I love the balls, man, but like, I don't know. I'm going to do it again this week. You're going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. We're going to have this party. Just saying.
I will be breaking news later. So after we do the DFS plays, I will give you my lock first round leader, because we know first round leaders like always come in. So I'll give you a lock. I will break news, and we're all going to be rich tomorrow. It's as easy as that.
I cannot.
You're welcome, America.
I'm in. You are welcome, America. I love it. All right, let us jump in. We are at what are we at again? The Sanderson Farms Championship. Should be a lot of fun. I think it's somewhere down south, maybe South Carolina. Shot in the dark. I know, no, not South Carolina, but definitely down south. I know Bermuda grass. That is something I heard.
Okay.
Mississippi. Okay, cool. That's down south. I'll take that. So I got half of that right. Confident in Bermuda grass. Listened to a couple things today getting ready for the show. They said Bermuda a million times, so I know that. So I don't know. For what it's worth, I think that part's pretty important. Let's jump into it. We have real golfers this time. Not to say the gentlemen weren't last time, but a lot more names that we know and recognize, which is kind of nice. It's always a little more enjoyable that way. I know you guys kind of like the other fields because there is that little bit more of an edge. There's a little bit more sharpness to it. But I think having someone like Scotty Scheffler, someone you guys have been playing for a little while, it's a little more fun. Sanjay Im back in this tournament. Don't know if we're going to hit him at 10-5, but we'll get there. But should be an interesting one. So, Sia, I'll start with you. Talk to me about this this top tier, this double-digit K range, and where we're going here.
Well, first of all, it's still a very weak field if we're going to compare it to the next like 47 tournaments that are about to come up on this year's FedEx Cup event list. So, I mean, yeah, there's a couple big names, and actually the middle range is really kind of nice in this particular tournament. But again, relatively weak field. So Scotty Scheffler is definitely the headliner. Let's see. There's 1, 2, 3. There's 5 guys that are 10,000 or above. The interesting thing with Scheffler is like he's clearly the class. He's clearly going to be, you're going to want to be like making birdies on this course. And he's clearly one of the few like just birdie makers, a guy that can go super, super low. The caveat to just really trusting him or the kind of the one watch out, if you will, is that he had COVID a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was 3 weeks ago now. I'm not really sure. And so he's sort of been out of action. So whether you want to say, oh, he might be rusty, or whether you want to say, well, maybe he hasn't been playing much. Maybe you want to say this is like a tune-up for him because he hasn't been playing much. There's several arguments you could make as to why Scheffler at this price would not be a good play. Another argument for him not being a good play, by the way, is that his ownership is close to 30%, which is like obnoxiously high. So he's one of those guys that, yeah, I definitely want to use him in cash. Yeah, I'll probably have a couple shares of him in GPPs, but in a field like this, I mean, if Scotty Scheffler is your best guy in the field, it's kind of that Brandon Steele argument. Now, Scheffler's in a different class, don't get me wrong. But remember, we were kind of making fun of the idea that everybody was like, oh, I'm so locked in on Brandon Steele. I like Scheffler a lot, but I also like so many guys in the 9K range that I'm not necessarily locked in. It's not a lock button guy, not even close. So in this range, okay, so Louis has withdrawn. Will Zalatoris is a popular guy. I know that Joel's going to talk about him, so I'm not going to steal his thunder there. I'm not really interested in Ben On at 10,000. Honestly, this range I'm largely fading. In my article, my write-up, which I think is going to get posted right after this show, I'll probably have a couple shares of Scheffler, Im, Zalatoris. Let's assume I'm making 20 lineups. I'll literally have only 6 lineups that feature the 3 names I just mentioned, and then the other 14 are going to start with, and we'll get to this, we'll start with like a Sam Burns or a Doc Redman.
Interesting. Interesting. So a lot of the same from last week. Really, there's no reason to go too high because, again, with a weaker field, that difference between those 10, 11K guys that are normally the Justin Thomases, the DJs, the Braysons of the world, the Rorys of the world, not quite the same drop off as it is to some of these other guys in the 9K range. So Joel,
Yeah, I will
yeah,
hold on. I will say before Joel starts, because I don't want to forget to say this. This one's really interesting because as I went to like the 6K range, I actually noticed, like even the low 6K range, I actually noticed some names that I was like, oh wow, this person's in this tournament. They're only 6,300, like a Wesley Bryan or a Jonathan Bird who had a good. So you could take a Scheffler, and be okay and take some of those like bottom feeder guys. I prefer more balance, but again, we can talk about this later. But it's not the kind of thing where the 6K range is a complete dead zone this week.
Mhm.
So you can take some 6K or a 6K guy and maybe be okay. Anyway, sorry, Joel.
No, but first, I do want to say, once you said 6K, Joel's face just lit up for anybody listening here on the podcast. He started smiling. I saw a little tear in his eye. It was absolutely beautiful. Joel, talk to me a little bit, especially about Zalatoris. I know we were kind of making fun of him a little bit last week. Not making fun of him, but the fact that he was double digits in per thousand range, and he's back there again with a little bit weaker field, but still some well-known golfers in here. So talk to me a little bit about him and the rest of this range.
Yeah, I think Sia's last point is kind of right on brand with what I was going to start off with. Is I'm actually going not normal, but I'm actually going opposite of Sia this week. So this week I like the stars and scrubs. I like taking a few guys in this top range. I think there's a handful of guys a class ahead of everyone else in this tournament, and I want them. So I'm going to be playing a lot of those guys, and then like Sia said, you can find guys in the 6K range this week that aren't that bad. So the way I'm looking at it is I'm going to get a few 6K guys that I don't find a big difference. They should just date between them and the guys in the 7 range. So I can get my guys that are priced up in the 10K range, fill out the roster with some, more mediocre guys that are just 6K and still feel happy with my roster. So that's how my early lineups have looked at that I've been building. Looking at this top range, listen, Scotty Scheffler is expensive, no doubt about it. And he's going to be high owned, which makes it really hard for GPPs with a high owned guy at that price. Here's the caveat to that. With having him, you're going to have to get low in the 6K range to even out the roster, which should be your kind of way of neutralizing the high ownership because you're going to have somebody that not a lot of people are going to have that are kind of down there. So that should be the neutralizer. I do think Scotty Scheffler is the best player in this field by a lot. And I'm going to be playing a lot of him because not only is he the best player in the field by a lot, but the course fits his strengths. So, you need a long hitter. He's extremely long. He's been really happy. The only reason he missed the PGA is because he got COVID. So assuming that, COVID didn't really mess him up, which I think it shouldn't have, I think he's going to be right back at the top. I think Sung J M is interesting. So, we've talked about Sung J M on our show a few times. For those of you who haven't heard or maybe forgot, he got cold this summer. He was, in FedEx point standings, he was in the top 5 all year. The post-COVID break came and he didn't do anything, and so people started fading him. But this is a guy that's more consistent than he had showed earlier in the summer, and now that is starting to come back, where he has a top 25, a top 10. He's looking better, and in a weaker field, you gotta like someone like him because he's just better golfers than a lot of these guys. So it is going to be hard to field rosters with Scheffler and Im, so just get creative on how you do it. But I do like both of them. Keep in mind, Im got second here at this exact tournament a year ago. So he has previous success on this course. Zalatoris. So this is the guy that we want to talk about. So as we all know, I think we've talked about, he's still an amateur. He's not even on the PGA Tour, which is funny to think about considering he's the 3rd highest priced guy in the tournament, and he was the highest priced guy in the last tournament. He's not even technically on the tour. But if you look at his advanced metrics, his ball striking is way ahead of everyone. He's killing. He's just playing really well. So if you want to find a guy in really good form, I mean, he's always been he's been one of the better golfers on the Korn Ferry Tour. So it's one of the better guys in the level below, and he's showed up. He's got 2 top 10s in the PGA Tour in the last 2 weeks. I don't see why he doesn't go back and at least compete this week. So I'll definitely gonna have my shares of him as well. And then Young An is someone that we talk about a lot in Showdown. He's a guy that for DraftKings purposes scores really well. Right, he'll get you a ton of birdies, which is how you score well. He's kind of hit or miss in that he might have a blow up day, But like in a tournament like this, you need to just score. If he gets you 2 really good days and 2 bad days, you're fine, right? He'll score well enough. The only issue with him on this tournament is his price. And you're not going to get all 4 of those guys in one. That's impossible. So it's just a matter of picking who you like. But I actually do like the top tier a lot. I'm probably going to be fading more of the middle tier and trying to do a lot of stars and scrubs. So that's my approach for the week.
I like that. This is going to be fun. You guys are pretty opposite, so we can kind of see how you each feel about it. And one note on Zalatoris. Again, we were trying to figure it out exactly before we got on here, but if he gets a top 10 finish, something very good happens to him in some capacity, whether he gets a tour card or he I think you were saying, Sia, right? He gets to go to the next. He's invited to a couple more and sponsored for a few after that. So not sure exactly what it is. Sure we could have just done a quick Google search. We never made it that far, but something really, really great happens. So he has a very good reason to do very well this week, which I think is pretty important.
Well, there are PGA Tour card implications, and there are exemption, or I should say, sponsor implications if he finishes top 10. Of course, if he wins it, that's a different story. But he is definitely a guy that's going to be keyed in on finishing in the top 10. I think we can leave it at that and be comfortable.
Yeah. Shout out, Mr. Zalatoris. Let us move on to this 9K range. So, Joel, you said you're going to be going a little more stars and scrubs. 9K does that, but I know Sia said most of his lineups are going to start with Sam Burns. So, Sia, talk to me. Sam Burns, Doc Redman, Adam Long, Dylan Fratelli, Connors, Ches Rivy, Luke Liss. I mean, all these guys. You've had all these guys in some way, shape, or form so far this year. Why not this week?
Yeah, and I had a few of these guys last week, particularly Sam Burns. And the one watch out for Sam Burns is that his ownership is like even higher than Scotty Scheffler's. I mean, he's Scheffler was tracking to 30%, which is probably around the point where it will stop. Burns is already over 30% ownership, projected ownership, I should say. So this is one of those where, yeah, it's probably better for cash. And, you can get really different in this tournament. Like we talked about, the 6K range is a really good way to get different. And some of the 7K guys I like, by the way, are less than 5% owned, and we'll get to that. So just know that Sam Burns is probably going to be the most popular guy on the slate. And by the way, part of the reason is, first of all, he's in pretty good form. I had him last week. He was great. I think he had a bad Saturday, and that's what sort of took him out of actually contending to win the tournament. He bounced back Sunday. 3 out of 4 days, he was great. So his form is good. This is a similar field from a talent standpoint, so I don't see any reason why he can't put 4 above average days together and be contending on Sunday. So long hitter, he's just been, his all-around game has been good. So Doc Redman is a ball striker. I like Doc Redman a lot in most tournaments, and especially in a tournament where the field is at least somewhat watered down. I feel like that's a place where Doc Redman can shine with his ball striking in particular. Not particularly long off the tee. He's not going to hit it as far as Sam Burns or Scotty Scheffler, but a very solid player, and I think it justifies the 9,800 or the 9,700 price. The other guys in the 9K range, I'm not necessarily huge fans of. I'm really not, at least not yet. I'm really not on any of these other guys in the 9K range, except another guy that I liked last week, who I believe finished 8th overall, and that is my friend Luke List. Not really my friend, but I think he's going to win this week, and it's going to be an outright, and then we'll be friends because he's going to win me money. So
yes,
I like Luke List. I think I already have a bet on him. I'll have to check at what the odds were, but it was somewhere in the 40-1 range, I think. Anyway, Luke List, another long hitter. He's in good form. His ownership isn't super high. It's around 15%, a little lower than that. So solid play in GPP, in my opinion.
I think if you put enough money on it and he does come through, and we just send him a video and say like, hey man, you won Sia like $1 million. Would you mind coming on the show to talk to us? I don't know. Worth a shot. It might work, man. It might work. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, it's working
on. Seriously, at that point, whatever, we can do anything.
See, we'll have to put a pretty big bet on him to win $1 million.
I love it. I believe in Sia. All right, Joel, you talk to me. How much of this 9K range, again, if you're going a little bit higher, it sounds like you're going to be in on this 9K range as well. Where are you going with some of your plays?
Yeah, so I really like this range a lot as well. First off the bat, Munoz won the tournament last year. So, listen, when I look at course history and I'm breaking down guys I want to play based on course history, an important thing I think about is not just did they do well there once, or have they had shown a track record of consistently doing well. So winning there once, good. He's capable of winning, but how has he done every other time he played it? And then these beyond winning it last year, he's got a tied for 50th and a tied for 35th. So, competent, but not great. So I'm not going to overly pursue that win last year. Most guys don't win a tournament 2 years in a row. He's not consistently good here. So I want to give everyone the facts. He did win the tournament. I wouldn't fade him completely, but he's not going to be someone I'm highly owned on. Doc Redman is a guy that he got tied for 52 here last year. Doesn't have any other course history. He is playing well. If you guys remember earlier in the summer, he was really competing. He strikes the ball really well, and I really like Doc Redman in these kind of like smaller fields because I feel like that's where he can rise to the top of the talent. So I like Doc Redman this week. Like Sia says, will be in my player pool, but not highly owned. I'll probably have maybe 10 to 20% shares of him. Sam Burns is an interesting one because he grades out well for this course. He's someone you probably would look good. Hitting the ball. He's a long striker. My issue with Burns for this week is just kind of how I'm building my lineups, right? So I'm like I said, I'm doing a lot of stars and scrubs, and there's only so many stars you can pick. You can't pick everybody. And I think what's deterring me from this, not form, his form's been okay. It's more the ownership, right? If I'm gonna already be playing some other high owner guys at this price, I think he's just one guy that I'm going to have to get away from. So I don't think I'll completely fade him, but he'll be low owned for me personally. Not really. He actually grades out well for me. It's just at that ownership, I feel like for GPPs, I can probably do better with some other guys up here. Mm-hmm. Now, one guy that I'm finding really interesting that's popping off that I'm thinking a lot about this week is Zach Johnson. So Zach Johnson is normally like a guy I always fade. I just not like a big fan of his. However, you have to be neutral. You can't just not like somebody. He's in good form. And over his last few tournaments, he's been playing well. His price is a little high. So, that's what makes it difficult to get him in. I would have liked to have seen him, $500 to $1,000 cheaper. However, he got tied for 14 last year. That's the only time he's played here. So he doesn't have enough course history to really make a strong stance. But this is one showing was pretty strong. So I like Zach Johnson just because I think he's playing well, and I think this is a spot where someone like him usually shows up and gets a nice score. And the last guy in this range I'm going to mention is Dylan Fratelli. So Dylan Fratelli is an explosive DFS player because there's a lot of people really like him. They're like, this is the guy. You got to go after him. A lot of people hate him. Like, how can you play Dylan Fratelli? Like, he stinks. So it's an explosive play. For me, the way I shake out on Fratelli is he's the epitome of a GPP player, right? He's a guy that's kind of hit or miss. He's either going to have a really good week and score really low, or he's probably going to blow up. So, he's the type of guy that definitely do not lock him into your lineups. That would not be a good idea. But definitely if you can, if you're going to build a few lineups where you can squeeze him in, definitely get him in there because he can definitely finish top 10 here, and he does do score well. So you'll notice there's guys that will be in the winning lineup that sometimes finish 30th. How the guy in 30th in the winning lineup? It's because they got 20 birdies. They just also had 35 bogeys. So he's the type of guy that will do that, so he can even get you a win not finishing that high.
Yeah, plus 15, usually not great, but in DFS, we don't care, man. What is it? I'd rather 9 birdies and 9 bogeys than 18 pars. There's no question about that. I think
that might not have been a good example. Plus 15 won't get
every good story needs a little hyperbole, Joel. I think you're doing a great job, buddy. Keep doing you. Keep doing you. All right, so let us move on to this 8K range. Again, a bunch of guys. I still understand and still know who some of these guys are. Starting to lose a little bit somewhere in this range. And see, if I'm not mistaken, you said you kind of really like this 8K range, right?
Yeah, actually, it's the 7K range that I'm really in love with. But no, I like the 8K range. So Grillo is in there at 8,800. I'm not going to be too heavy on him, but I did like him last week. And one thing I want to be really careful about doing is, Grillo was okay last week, but I don't want to just pivot off of a guy that I liked literally 4 days ago or 5 days ago, just because he had a subpar, no pun intended, week. So some of these guys that I liked last week, especially with similar talent, in the field and quite frankly, a similar course in terms of it's not a super easy course. It's right around average, but it's certainly not a super difficult course. So some of these guys that I had last week, like a Chris Kirk, who absolutely bombed, I'm going to have a couple shares of him because I liked him last week and I think he might be okay this week. But going down the range, I'll point out Bud Cauley did withdraw. Sergio Garcia is really interesting because he's obviously an elite player in this field, but his putting has been so grossly bad. And so it's one of those things where you're like, well, I guess you could get a hot putter, but you can't really say that about Sergio these days because he hasn't had a good putter in like a really, really, really long time. But because he's such a good ball striker, because he gains off the tee, he's a guy that I'm going to have a couple shares in. Just like maybe he gets lucky with the putter. He's a great guy to have in showdown more so than maybe over 4 rounds, but I will have a couple of shares of him. A couple other guys I like in this 8K range are Patrick Rogers and Cameron Davis. Cameron Davis is going to be super popular. If you listen to any podcast this week on the Sanderson, there are going to be plenty of people that are going to talk up Cam Davis. And it makes sense because all he's been doing lately is making cuts, and he's a perfect course fit for this course. So again, this is a guy maybe you want to shove in your cash lineup versus a GPP. But again, if you have him in GPP, that's okay. Just be different in a lot of other places, and you'll be okay if you really like Cam Davis. And I do like Cam Davis this week. It is tracking at around 25% ownership though, so just know that. Cam Davis is a guy that I'll also have in the outright market as well, just so you know, because I think the odds justify it.
I love it. Joel, how about you, man? What about this 8K range?
I'm still intrigued in this range. I promise I'll start to fade a little bit more as we get a little bit lower. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yeah, loud and clear. So my biggest, I think the guy I'm on the most in this range is definitely Carlos Ortiz. So let me give you a little background on Carlos Ortiz. Carlos Ortiz is someone who was like a sneaky play of mine, or normally is a sneaky play of mine. Since I started doing this, granted that's only been like 6 months, but still, I've always been a fan of Carlos Ortiz. His form has been hit or miss more often lately. However, what's really driving me toward him this.
Oh darn! He sunk the punchline.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish the thought just for a second, because Ortiz the last 2 years at the Sanderson Farms has finished 4th and 3rd, and I know that's obviously that's exactly what he was talking about earlier in terms of like a consistency in terms of finishing well on this particular track. So, I mean, Ortiz grades out well there. I mean, he was 46th at the Safeway. That was his most recent tournament. Not too impressive. 25th at the BMW, and then he missed 3 cuts right before that. So I think that's a good GPP play. His ownership is, I think when I just looked at it, was around like 14%. So that's not too bad for a guy who finished 4th and 3rd the last 2 times he's been here. I mean, at this price, that actually makes sense. He wasn't on my radar at all, but that certainly makes sense.
I understand why Joel was curious if we could hear him, because I guess his internet hasn't been too great. Oh, but he's back. Got a little closer to that Wi-Fi, bud.
I got close to the Wi-Fi. Now I realize that I'm.
Yeah, we can't see you. It's a really
I love it because
sensual. Yeah, like a nice silhouette.
Yeah, it looks like you're on one of those like crime solving shows, and you're like an anonymous witness that doesn't want to be revealed, which is kind of cool because like you're giving out this like Carlos Ortiz pick that maybe you don't want people to know because you're gonna hammer it in the outright market, and you don't want the IRS to come after you. That's the story we're building.
How deep can you make your voice right now?
How does this sound?
Nope, you sound like Oscar the Grouch.
Exactly.
Sesame Street. I have a 1-year-old. I've been watching a lot of Sesame Street. Some say I have the best Cookie Monster impression. So
we have to hear. We have to hear that now. We have to hear that now. Let's go.
Tell us the rest of your Carlos Ortiz.
Cookies.
No, can you do Carlos Ortiz analysis in a Cookie Monster voice?
No, so back Carlos Ortiz.
We do need to see you though. That is the only thing. We actually cannot see you.
Carry on. Let's finish the 8K range, and then we'll
back. I'll find some more lights. Okay. So just so you guys know, I'm also moving tomorrow, so my apartment looks like a disaster. So I got a lot of obstacles working against me tonight, but we're still getting you the content that you guys need. So don't worry about that. But let me get back. Carlos Ortiz is important because he's one of my favorite plays, definitely in this range. I'm not sure where I could have, but what I was saying was last year he finished tied for 4th. The year before that, tied for 3rd. So he's got 2 top 5 finishes last 2 years, and that's where I was saying before, you want to find guys who are consistently good on the course, not guys who had one good year. He does that, and he's one of those guys that, I think his ball striking numbers are a little bit better than usually how he's priced. Now, he's priced up. Like, he's normally a 6K range guy. He's obviously way more expensive than that this week. So he's priced accordingly for the week. But I really like him. I don't think his ownership's going to be that high. So I think you're going to get a nice sneaky value play with a guy who, has consistent success on this course.
I love it.
A couple other guys in this range that I'm going to target is Siwo Kim. So Siwo Kim is a guy that his ball striking and his recent form is really strong. And if you noticed, was it 2 tournaments ago or 2 or 3 tournaments ago, he was the highest priced golfer, right? So, it shows you a couple weeks can do it. Things change. Had he maybe, finished a little bit higher in one of those tournaments, he'd probably be right in the top range again. So I think that's what we're getting to like what we talked about in the beginning of the show, where it's like, with Hudson Swafford, right? It was like, well, thinking about this price kind of took me off. And it's kind of the same thing with him. It's like, yeah, maybe a tournament or two is a little bit of recency bias, but this is a guy who, as of a month ago, would have been the highest priced golfer on the slate. So I'm definitely going to have some shares on him. I could see him even taking down the whole tournament this week. And then the last 2 guys, I know, Sia mentioned Cameron Davis is really high owned. I think that is a turnoff for me. I do like him this week from the standpoint that his metrics fit this course. He's going to hit it long. We want long hitters, and basically they say accuracy shouldn't matter too much. So if he gets it out there in the rough, that shouldn't affect him too much. He should be able to recover and score well. So I'm definitely like Davis. I want to see where his ownership numbers look come Saturday, because if it's too high, I just don't think it makes sense to play him. But if it's, around 10 or under 10%, then I'll definitely have him in my lineups. My last play in this range that I'm going to bring up is this is a tough one. I'm going to butcher his name. Xinjun Zhang.
Nice.
Xinjun was winning one of my big tournament winning lineups, so I have a soft spot for him because he's won me a lot of money before. He often goes under the radar. He's not someone that we often talk about, but he's pretty consistent. Now, I don't think he's going to win the tournament, so I wouldn't go there, but I do think he's a top 20, right? I think he's consistent. He's above average golfer. In this range, at this price, if you can get maybe, 2 higher price guys, 2 lower price guys, and fit him as your last spot, I think that's a really good value that can add, at least get a winning lineup as your 6th golfer.
Yeah, for Mr. Zhang, last couple times out at the Corrales last week, had 94 DraftKings points. A couple weeks before at the Safeway, 95. So both top 15, top 14 finishes. We're not too angry about that. It's definitely going to do his thing. So, Joel, while Sia starts talking about the 7K range, you go figure out your lighting. How's that sound?
That's perfect.
All right, Sia, talk to us a little bit about the 7K range. As you said, you're in on it. You're excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a few guys I like to lean on that are in this 7K range. By the way, I like the point on Siwo Kim. I think Siwo Kim is actually a really smart play if you consider his price. And let's see, his projected ownership isn't that high. It has jumped in the last day or so it might jump again, but it's not going to go above 15%. It definitely won't go above 15%. And for that quality of golfer, it actually kind of makes sense to stick him in some lineups for sure. So there's a few guys I like. I'll be kind of quick here because the 7K range is actually super big. So maybe I'll just go from 7,900 to 7,500 for now. I think Denny McCarthy is a great play. He played last week. I don't think he was particularly great. A little disappointing, but again, I'm not going to pivot off a guy just because 1 week he was a little bad when I liked him 5 days ago. So Tom Lewis is a guy I really like for a couple reasons, because we're talking GPP mostly. He's 5% ownership right now, and he'll probably stabilize around 5-6%. And he is exactly the golfer that Joel was describing when he was talking about Dylan Fratelli, except he's just in a cheaper range and therefore probably has a little bit more blow-up potential. But if you recall, Tom Lewis, for there's probably a couple of tournaments, he had a few rounds that were just unbelievably good. He's finished second in the WGC, which is a talent-laden field. Granted, that was a little while ago, and he's been pretty bad ever since. But he's just the type of guy, again, we're talking GPP. We're talking about trying to win a tournament outright. And we know he is the type of guy that can contend on Sunday and can get really hot and make a ton of birdies on a birdie-making course. So at 5%, I think he's kind of the perfect play, not to lock button, of course, but to have in a few lineups, because if he goes off, you're picking up so much leverage. You're picking up so much on the field. So I like him. There's a couple of guys that aren't quite as sexy as the Tom Lewis, which isn't a sexy name, but his prospects to me are sexy. Guys that are kind of more you'd almost consider them safe plays, but to me, that they're in such good form. I've leaned on him so much in the past. Stewart Sink is one of those guys. He's in really good form. He just took down a tournament. He's not a long hitter. You know, you prefer length at this course, but you don't have to be long here. So him and Rory Sabatini, who, by the way, hasn't been as good lately, I like both of those guys. I think Rory Sabatini and Stewart Sink are historically underrated, underowned, you know, underbet, whatever you want to call it. So I like those two. And then once we get down to that 7,500 range, actually my next guy is 7,400. So I'll let Joel take the 7,900 to 7,500 range real quick.
Yeah, and this range I'm a little light on. I have two plays I really like. And while I'm here, I realize we missed one guy. One guy I just want to mention before we get too into it is Lucas Glover. He's 8,000, so he's at the edge of the range. But the reason I want to mention him is because Lucas Glover is super consistent. So he's a guy that, like, for cash I really like. Maybe not as much for GPPs, but just so everyone has all the information, he's got a pretty good course history. He didn't make the cut last year, but he's got a tied for 14 in 2019, tied for 5th in 2017, 39th in 2016. He's pretty consistent. So he's definitely someone to keep your eye on at 8K. And then heading into the 7K range, right below, I really like Denny McCarthy this week. I've been on him a lot recently. Again, my biggest thing most recently has been, what have you done for me at this course? So last year, tied for 18. The year before that, tied for 7th. So he's got enough recent history where he's done pretty well. And then I just remember, like, he was a tournament-winning golfer at the Northern Trust, was it? No, it was a couple tournaments before that where he went 7 under on Sunday, and everyone who had him was basically making money. So he's a guy that can definitely get you there, and he's at a cheap enough price where in this tournament, I would have, like, if I was worked for DraftKings, I would have priced him definitely in the high 8s. So I think there's a good value there. Continue to kind of look in this range, I think, just to have the information. I don't love Chesson Headley. He has he has finished second here in 2018. His recent form isn't bad. He's another one of those hit or miss type of guys where he either comes to play or he kind of implodes. So yeah, obviously don't Staples button him, you know, low ownership. But yeah, I think it's safe to put him in a few lineups where the salary makes sense. So, like, you know, I mentioned those types of players are the ones where you've put 5 guys in and you just need one guy in this range. Okay, if that's the case, then yeah, that guy makes sense. And then the last guy from this range that I'll even mention, is 7,600 is still this range. So Brian Stewart. So Brian Stewart's an interesting one because he's playing really well recently. He won. He was really good in a tournament. Real recently, it was a bad field, which, you know, this is too. But, you know, his form is good, and he tends to kind of play up to these bad fields. Like, he tends to play really well when to me, it feels like when he feels like he has a real chance, he plays to that, right? So I think this could be another spot for him to show up and get another top 10.
It looks like the Safeway, he was tied for 3rd, and then also had 115 DraftKings points. So that's nothing we're angry about. Yeah.
Yeah, and his track record here is pretty good, Michael. It's 28th in 2020 or last year, so to speak. And he missed the cut in 2019, but in 2018 he was 4th. So he clearly has, you know, top 5 potential here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Someone loved our Griot play from last week. So hopefully the Griot play from this week will be just as good. S-Guy 840. There we go. Yeah, I assumed it was Sia. You put Sis. Unless your sister plays DraftKings, which is totally fine too. I don't think that's a problem.
By the way, he might be talking about the Griot play for this week.
Oh.
Because anyway, I don't know. Maybe he's not. But we know S-Guy 840, I think, might have joined us on the NFL show, which, by the way, is tomorrow, 8:30, and we're going to have a special guest tomorrow for that.
Yes.
So thanks for participating, buddy. We appreciate you.
Yeah, keep staying by. Ask us questions if you have any, and make some money with us because we've been doing a lot of that recently. All right, Sia, let's talk about the rest of the 7K range. I see my man Taylor Gooch is in there.
Yeah, I've got another Taylor to feed you though, and it's Nick Taylor, who is right in that 7,400 range. So I've sort of always been.
That was really good, by the way. That was good.
It almost seemed orchestrated, but it was not.
Nobody will
anyway.
ever know.
Exactly. By the way, Taylor Gooch isn't a bad play. I just happen to not be on him. I'm going to be, instead of the guy Taylor Gooch, who's about 13% ownership, I'm going to be on the guy that's 2% ownership. Again, we're talking GPPs. And for me, particularly in this tournament, I'm really just searching for upside. I don't mind booming or busting. And I got to be honest, I'm starting to sort of transition my way of thinking in these tournaments from cut makers, which was my previous sort of the way I would do things, to listen, we're talking GPPs. And even if they're like single entry GPPs, for me, they're usually, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 single entry GPPs. So I'm starting to go for the boom potential as opposed to the cut maker potential. So that's sort of where Nick Taylor comes in. I mean, he hasn't been very good lately. Although at the BMW, I believe after round one, he was the round one leader, and I think he faded the rest of the way. He made the cut, and I think he finished 51st. But at this particular tournament, let's see, he has, in the last 4 times he's played here, he's got a missed cut, a 26th, a 23rd, and a 20th. So again, I don't know that he has the super big upside to put 4 great days together, but I've seen him compete in years past in bigger tournaments than this. And at 2% ownership, I've just decided I'm going to have a few shares, even though the metrics don't pan out. But again, if I had just ignored the metrics last week, I would have had an outright on Hudson Swafford. So we need to be careful with the models that everybody is leaning on and things like that. They are very instructive, but they're not like, listen, if the models were always right, we'd all have the same model and we'd all be winning the same prize, right? Mm-hmm. So Nick Taylor is where I'm at there. I'm looking at Hudson Swafford at 3%, and I'm like, am I really going to avoid this guy again? So just for the sake, listen, he's obviously in good form. He's a long hitter. So have a couple shares of Hudson Swafford. Not a guy I'm leaning on. I think his track record here isn't very good from what I recall. So a few other guys in the 7,000 range I like. I'll go over them real quick. There's only 3 that are really sort of jumping out at me. Cameron Tringal I really like at 7,300. He's just a solid player. And when he's hot, he's hot. And I just think in this field, talk about guys that, like you were talking about Brian Stewart, who like shows up at fields where he can maybe win. Cameron Tringal is actually, that's a perfect description for Tringali as well. And by the way, I do like Brian Stewart as well, but I should have mentioned him. That's how much I like him. So I like Cameron Tringali for the same reasons. Chris Kirk, again, Chris Kirk is the type of guy that is sort of, boom or bust, but when he's on, he's very good. He's very good with his irons when they're on. So I was on him last week. I'm just going to be on him this week. I'm not going to cut bait after 1 week. And then the other guy I like, again, boom or bust, under 5% ownership, but has the pedigree. He's just been injury plagued for like a year straight. And that's JB Holmes at 7,000. I will be taking a couple shots at JB Holmes as well.
What's up, JB? Let's get it. Nope, never mind. He's helped me golf twice since the comeback. Missed the workday charity cut and was tied for 46th at the Safeway. But I mean, that's fun, man. And as our friend S Guy says, risk it for the biscuit. We're here to make money, man. That's why we're talking GPPs. All right, Joel, talk to me a little bit about this the lower half of the 7K range. Because again, if you're going very top heavy, you're doing stars and scrubs. I'm assuming you got a couple guys down here that you like.
Yeah, so this is the range. This is all describe all my plays in this range, right? This is the range where you've built your stars and scrubs lineup. You've got your 5 guys, and now you have someone in this range that you need to fill in. So I'm not in love with anyone in this range. There's a few guys I like, so I'm just going to kind of list through the likes. Starting in this range, I like Nick Taylor. I don't love him, probably not as much as Sia does, but I like him. He's definitely someone you can fit in at this price range. I like JT Poston. JT Poston is a guy who I would say in June, maybe probably a little earlier than June, he would have been one of the highest price guys in this field. Form does mean a lot. His form isn't been there. So I understand why he is priced here, but kind of going on what Sia was saying to open the show, he is the talent to be one of the better golfers in this field. He just hasn't been playing really well. So if you want to throw him in a lineup, I think that's completely fair. Going down, Swafford just won a tournament. So yeah, you can certainly like him. Cameron Percy, I actually probably like the most in this range. Mainly because his form isn't bad. He's been playing well, but his course history, tied for 11th last year. He didn't play in 2019. Then he's tied for 34th, tied for 42, tied for 15. So he's making a lot of cuts here. He's competing. You're going to need better than those 42 and 34s, but he's got 2 in the top 20s, and those will get you there. So you'll know at least you're going to get a cut maker, someone that's going to compete, above average guy. In this price, I think he checks a lot of boxes. And the last guy in this range that I'll mention, or the last 2 guys in this range that I'll mention are, so an interesting one here is, would you pronounce it Christopher something wants me to do Christopher Ventura. It's
Mm.
Christopher, right? It's just spelled with a K.
Yeah, I would go Christopher there.
Christopher. Okay. So the reason I really like him is because he was on my radar last week. Because his form was good, but last week I don't remember off the top of my head, but his price was like in the 9,000s. And this isn't that much weaker of a field. So why did he drop so much? I don't know. I still think he's a good player. So I actually think, not because I super love him as a player for this course, but because of the price discrepancy, I think he's just undervalued this week. And because of that, when I need someone in this range, I'm definitely going to be targeting him. And Kirk, I'm going to go back to Kirk. Kirk is the top 10 here. His top 10 was in 2018. He hasn't really played here much other than that. Yeah, he's definitely a risk. He's another one of those kind of lineup fillers, but definitely someone that's worth maybe taking a couple shots on.
Got to take shots somewhere, man. We got to take shots somewhere. That's how we make the money. That is how we make the money. All right, let's get to the fun part. Sia, 6K range. We always know, of course, you have your secret weapon. Again, I said it in the beginning, windailysports.com/chat. Sia has not missed a secret weapon yet. Every single one has made the cut. And not only just made the cut, but it's actually done pretty damn well. And this is a golfer that's under 7K, that is under 5% owned, that most people probably haven't even heard of their name. And then once Sia graces the world with their name, that golfer becomes just absolutely fantastic. So it's a little magical spell we're working here, but it's still working. We're going to keep going with it. But the rest of the 6K range, you do pretty well on too. So talk to me a little bit about this range, because we know Joel is going to need to dip down here at some point.
So last week the secret weapon was Hank Lebioda. So I only bring him up because I wanted to say the moniker Hammer and Hank, because it's fun. So yes. I just said it there, but I'll probably say it again in a few seconds, like in a more fun way. But the point is Lebioda was like, he made the cut, which was great. I mean, he was like, I think he was priced at like 6,400, and that happened to be my secret weapon. So I went way down in the range. He scored kind of average, on Saturday, but or maybe a little below average, actually. On Sunday, he had a birdie streak on the front nine and I think an eagle on the back nine. So he was like a scoring monster on Sunday. So that helped a few of my lineups that actually cashed. Unfortunately, a lot of my lineups had Kirk. So that was an issue with me cashing most of my lineups, but not all. So anyway, I will have a secret weapon, but I was proud of Hammer and Hank for coming through on Sunday in particular, because a lot of these secret weapons, they make the cut, and then sometimes they might just fizzle on Saturday and Sunday, but Lebioda did the opposite. So a few 6K guys I like. The first one is right at the top of the list, Tom Hoge. He is really, really, really good with his irons. Not great off the tee, not necessarily a great putter. I'm trying to remember the tournament where he was first place after round one. It was a recent tournament. He can really get hot with his irons. In the summer, he was pretty much cold, but I think his game is actually coming into form, and I think this is a really good tournament, a really good time to take him.
It looks like it was the Wyndham. He shot 62 that first round. So gotcha. I'm assuming he was pretty damn close to the top there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like him quite a bit, and I'm trying to take a look at his course history real quick. And yeah, so he had 3 consecutive missed cuts, but then last year he finished 39th. So, I mean, you can read into that whatever you want. Maybe he's getting used to the course, who knows? Or maybe he's, as of last year was coming into form. That's not going to be very instructive, but he's just one of those guys at 6,900, I think is a good play because he's such a good ball striker, particularly with his irons. A couple other guys I like, Adam Shank. So again, I know I'm going kind of boom, and I'm kind of trying to go with the guys that have a ton of upside, but I do need to point out that Adam Shank is your classic cut maker. Like, this guy has made, I don't know how many consecutive cuts, it's 7 or 8 cuts in a row. And so when you're looking at a guy at 6,700 who has made that many cuts in a row, now he doesn't finish very strong. So, he's finishing 30th or like sometimes 50th or 22nd, whatever it is. So, the upside is limited, but I believe in 2019, that's what it is. 2019, he finished 7th here. So he actually has top 10 upside on this course. I mean, there's actually like empirical data to support that. So I'll have a couple shares of Gim. Again, I'm just going with my formula from last week. I don't want to abandon everybody I had last week, and Gim was one of my guys last week. A few other guys that I'll have just very limited shares of. Thigala, I'll actually have a couple shares of. He can get hot. He's probably more of a showdown guy than he is, a 4 rounds guy, but I'll have a couple shares of him at 6,600. I'll go back to Hammer and Hank at 6,500, a share or two. I'm not necessarily leaning on that one. I don't have as much confidence in him this week as I did last week in naming him the secret weapon. Ryan Armour, or as Joel likes to say, Armour. is interesting because he's actually taken this tournament down before. So not a long hitter. He doesn't necessarily fit this course like some of these other guys that I like a Cameron Davis, Sam Burns. But Ryan Armour, we saw him over the summer get hot for a couple tournaments in a row. So he absolutely has the ability to, especially at 6,400 at under 2% ownership, to actually make your GPP lineup. Two other guys I want to mention. One is basically stealing Joel's thunder, because this guy was a scoring monster, and he was buried on the depth chart, if you will, and he's buried on the depth chart this week. And his name, Joel, do you know who I'm talking about, right? Kelly Craft. This guy that sounds like the ambassador to Hellman's or Kraft or mayonnaise is like just he's a scoring machine. I mean, last week he had, I don't know if it was like 5 or 6 birdies in a row one day and a birdie streak the next day or whatever it was. I mean, this is the type of guy that can creep up in your GPPs. And really, if he makes the cut, you can kind of lean on him to maybe have a bad Saturday, but a great Sunday, or vice versa. So I like that. The other guy that was surprising to me that he was down here, and it took me a second to realize he was actually down here. Matthew Naismith is one of them, but Wesley Bryan. Wesley Bryan earlier this year put together a few great rounds, a few great tournaments, and I'm just surprised. I mean, the last few he hasn't been very good. That's why he's 6,300 and under 4% ownership. But the fact that he's even 3% ownership right now at 6,300 tells you that some people had the same reaction I did, because most of these guys are like under 1% or 1.5% or something like that. So I think Wesley Bryan's really sneaky at 6,300. I mean, this goes with that stars and scrubs narrative that Joel was talking about. And Jonathan Bird is probably the last guy that I think I might have a share of at less than 1%. He shined a little bit last week as well. So there's a lot of guys in the 6K range I'm willing to take shots on this week. Normally there's just like 3 or 4. This week, again, if I have 20 lineups, I might have, 8 or 9 of these guys, just dispersed within those 20 lineups, which is a lot. Normally you wouldn't have that. I wouldn't recommend it, at least.
No. We'll listen to you, Sia. Don't worry. You're the one that's been helping us make money. For Wesley Bryan, top 25 at the Travelers, top 25 at the Rocket Mortgage, 31 at the Wyndham. And the other one that I was looking at that was interesting, Mr. Amois. He had, let's see, bringing it up here. He had tied 4th at the Rocket and tied 6th at the Traveler. So, yeah, I mean, it was a little earlier in the summer, June, July timeframe. Hasn't really been great since. Actually, he missed his last 3 cuts, including last week. But hey, obviously the possibility is there, and that's sometimes really what we need with these guys.
Yeah, and by the way, missing the cut last week is a pretty good indicator, because that was an easy field, and so I'm glad you pointed that out. So I probably, and I know Joel's going to mention some too, and he's probably going to mention Armour too. I probably mentioned like 10 guys in that 6K range. And Armour, admittedly, would be on the lower end of that. But just the fact that he won in 2018, he was 25th at the Wyndham, which wasn't too long ago. But you're right. His recent form, including last week, was not very good. But will I have a share of Ryan Armour out of 20 lineups? Yes.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, Joel, talk to me. You're gonna be dumpster diving a little bit. So what street corner are we going to? Because sometimes we find some good stuff down there.
I think like my story of this tournament is this range. So I just think there's a few. I don't know if the player pricers at DraftKings got lazy this week or what, but I just think there's a handful of guys that don't belong in this range, and so I'm going to find that value, and I'm going to do my stars and scrubs knowing that there's a lot of prized possessions down here that I found already that normally I really struggle to find when we're building for other tournaments. So with that being said, I feel like there's no difference between some of these guys I'm about to list and the 7K range. Mm-hmm. Now the first thing I'm going to start off by saying is Bo Hogue, who we were mentioning. What tournament was it that he got the lead in? It was the Wyndham Championship, and it was the guy who tied HV3 the day we made the HV3 versus on leader bet. I remember this like it was yesterday, because I remember HV3 coming out, shooting a ridiculous first-round score early, and me just thinking, no way anyone is tying that score. That's an absurd score. I was already celebrating. I already cashed my check. I won. And then this guy comes in the afternoon and goes nuts. I'm like, how is this guy going to – and actually, you know what? He should have actually beaten him. He actually took the lead going into 18, and then he bogeyed 18, which gave us back the tie for Varner. So, we can't forget that. So, yeah, he is. He's in good form. I would say for him for this week, I like him a lot more for a showdown slates than I do for the whole week, because I just think he has a hard time putting 4 days together. But like we always say, if he does even 3 days and blows up one day, that's good enough for scoring on DraftKings. So from that, I do like him as a couple of shares target. I do like a lot of guys in this range, so I'll try to be quick so everyone can get to see our super exciting presidential election this evening, at least the debate for the election. But the first guy that I'm going to mention is Patton Kizzire. So Patton Kizzire is a guy that recently I've been targeting in a lot of my tournaments. He hasn't been coming through that well, but he hasn't been terrible. So he's just kind of been mediocre. His form I wouldn't say is bad. However, he does have a decent course history. Last year he missed the cut. He didn't play in 2019, but then in 2018 he's tied for 10th, missed the cut in 2017, and then in 2016 he's tied for 4th. So that's 2 top 10s, which is good, especially for a guy in the 6K range. But they're not recent. So I don't want to put too much weight on that because it was a few years ago, but for a guy that can have success on this course, there's a target. I'm going to scroll down a little bit further. I'm going to mention Adam Shank. He's not typically one of my favorite plays, but he has a tied for 7th in 2019. And again, especially in this field, he's someone that feels like he should probably be another $1,000. So getting a good bargain on his price, definitely if he makes sense, we'll fit him in. A guy I like a lot here is one of my favorite plays, I would say, in the 65 to 7,000 range is Bronson Burgoon. So Bronson is actually in pretty good form. I mean, form is kind of looked at differently compared to the field, right? So you don't have to worry about any of those top guys. With the guys you have to compare him to, he's in good form. With that being said, last year he was tied for 6th, didn't play the year before. He withdrew in 2018, which doesn't give you anything because he could have been playing well and just withdrew. It doesn't mean he was bad. He could maybe got hurt. Didn't play the year before that, and he has a tied for 20th. So his results when playing, as long as he doesn't withdraw, are very strong. And his recent form is good at this price. He just seems like a really good fit. So I don't see I wouldn't definitively rather have most of those guys in the 7K range than him. So I'm definitely going to be playing a high volume of him. I also like, and this is an interesting one we don't always go to, Robert Streb. So Bob is not a very known guy.
Bobby. I think he likes to go by Bobby with an I.
He's probably a lower known golfer, if you will. However, he plays in all the big tournaments. You'll see his name on the leaderboard. He's one of those guys that you always see pop up. Oh, who's that guy, right? And then maybe he doesn't put out the other 4 days, but he's been around and he's got the history here with his last year tied for 23 and tied for 26. So I think first hearing those numbers, you're probably like, no, it's okay. It's not great. But a couple things, right? 2 top 25 or at least right around top 25 finishes at a course means you're playing better there than you do normally. So that's something to target, right? You're better on this course than you would be on a different course. So there's the reason one. Reason two, tied for 25 and 26 at this price cashes, right? If you have those 2 top tier guys that win the first and second place and he gets 25th, that's enough for you to win a GPP. So you don't need to get 1 through 5th place. You need to get guys at the right price. If your 10,500 guy wins the tournament and then your 6,000 guy gets 20th, that can win. As I continue to scroll, in a similar thought process is Scott Stallings. So Scott Stallings, if you recall, right when the return started, he was red hot. He had 2 top 5 finishes. He was almost for me, he was a must play in the beginning. He's come back down to earth. Obviously, he's not still doing that. But it shows you that he has he's capable, right? He's not one of these guys that never gets there. He's done it before. In this field, those are the type of guys you want to look for because these are the guys where they pop when they don't have to face Bryson and Rory and all those guys. With that being said, Stallings form on this tournament tied for 28th, 39th, 43rd, 28th. So again, mediocre, but he's making cuts. He's getting you enough points, and at this price, sure, we can get some shares of him in there as well. The last couple of guys I'm going to touch on is as one of our favorite plays is Ryan Armour. He was actually similar with competing with Scott Stallings in the same tournament. I think it was it the 3M Open? It was right around there where they were competing for top 5. So I like him as well. Siwo was right. This maybe statistically probably isn't the best course for him, like long hitters, things like that. But I just think he's a guy that when he puts together a weekend, a good strong weekend, he can be in that elite class of golfer. And in this tournament at this price, getting someone capable of doing that, definitely have a few shares of him. He's also won this tournament in 2018. So you have someone who's already won it before. So there's that. And then I like Vaughn Taylor. My concern with Vaughn Taylor is that I just don't know how old he is, and sometimes I think he might be like 50, and I'm like, is he just too old to play in your lineup? But other than that, he's actually got decent recent form. He's incredibly cheap, and he missed the cut last year, but in 2019 he was tied for 26th. He was tied for 10th in 2018, didn't play in 2017, tied for 20th. That's really strong for someone at this price range. I mean, that's more often than not, it's averaging top 20. So I would 100% like him a lot, especially when you're putting in your, Siwo Kims, your Zalatoris, Byung-Hung and what have you. The last couple of guys I'm going to touch on, because I know we're taking long here, so I was going to mention Sia's boy from last week, Aaron Battley. I like Aaron mainly because he's got a tied for 4th and a tied for 30th. There were a few years ago, but he's one of those guys that I see popping in a weaker field. Peter Malmari, I only mentioned him because he's won the tournament, but that was in 2006. Maybe one share or two. And then my last mention for the low range, and a guy that I actually like a lot, is DJ Traham. So I started getting turned on to DJ in Showdown. I played him Saturday and Sunday last weekend, and he's in good form. So I took his recent form and said, okay, he's playing well. And I'm not even just talking about last week. If you look, so a lot of times when I'm doing Showdown, I'll look at, let me see your last 3 tournaments. And if you have guys, I want to find guys that have gotten below 60, 66 or below multiple times. Because that's what I need to win. I need a guy that's going to get me a 66 or below, especially in a Showdown. So over the last 3 weeks, he had a bunch. And maybe he also has a 74 here or there, but he's able to get you that 66, which is how you score well. So at this price, he just seems way too juicy to pass up on.
Ooh, juicy. I like that a lot. That is fun. And yes, remember, we're not done with the 6K range. Go to windailysports.com/chat. And you can hop in our expert chat. Sia will give you that secret weapon. You can plug him into your lineups and pretty much just forget about it at that point because the dude doesn't miss. So that is the DFS portion. Let's get to the other fun stuff. We're going to have some first round leaders, but first, give me some outrights. We've already talked about a couple. I think Luke List was one of them at 40-1, Sia, right? And there was somebody else that you mentioned, but I apologize. You guys have mentioned like 100 people in the last hour, so I forgot. Who are some of your outright bets that you have coming up for the Sanderson Farms Championship?
So interesting. I got Luke List, I believe, on my website, which is a website for play chips. I think I got it at 40-1, but on DraftKings, he's 55-1. And let's just go by DraftKings. So obviously shop your lines, whether it's golf or any other sport. So the outrights that I like, of course, are Luke List, which you can get apparently at 55-1. Cam Davis at 46-1, I think, is actually pretty solid value. And then I'm going to just take some long shots here. I'm not going to take the classic, Ben On or Sam Burns or Scotty Scheffler because the odds aren't very good. Tom Lewis at 75-1. I hate that Tom Lewis has never played this course before, but it doesn't seem like a super complex course, so I'm not super worried about that. Cameron Tringali at 90-1 and Nick Taylor at 125-1. Those are my outrights. And by the way, in that 6K range, another guy I like for DFS is Rob Oppenheim. I believe he's 6,500. He's made a few cuts in a row. His ball striking hasn't been great, but he's somehow found a way to sneak into top 20. So that's another guy to look into in that really low stars and scrubs range.
If I'm not mistaken, Joel, you brought him up last week, right?
I did. I liked him last week. I agree with that play. And there's another guy that I intentionally left out of DFS that I'm going to mention now. I do like him for DFS too if you want to play him. But I didn't want to mention him because I want this to be the first mention of him. Is my outright play. I'm going to bet it for obviously very small wager. This is not something I would bet super confidently. He's a big long shot, but he's 60-1. So 60-1, I feel like I like the 60-1 shots on this field because it's like nobody should be a heavy favorite in this field, right? Because nobody's that great. And the one I'm going to read this stat before I tell you who it is. He did not play here the last 2 years. He has tied for 25th in 2018, didn't play in 2017, tied for second in 2016. His price on DraftKings is 6,100, almost the minimum. So this is a guy who, when he plays this course, he's 25 and second. He's almost the minimum price. His name is William Mccarf. I love him. I love him as a play. I like his name. He's like someone I want to get behind this week. I'm going to put a few shekels on him to win the tournament at 60-1. My thought process for gambling, not DFS, for this week is like it feels if it's not going to be one of the top guys, one of the main favorites who I do like, who I might put a little bit on, I like Sia's strategy of like, let's wait till day 2. Let's wait till Saturday, see where guys are. And then we can maybe put a straight up wager then on a more favorite, because the odds won't change much, right? Like unless one of the top 4 guys has a 3-stroke lead already, it could be similar odds what you get now. Maybe you'll lose a couple points, but for the most part, you can wait a couple days for the favorites because those odds don't change all that much heading into Saturday. And if one of them's not playing well, then you saved your money. You didn't have to waste it. The long shots, though, you have to bet now because if McGirt is in top 10 coming into Saturday, he's not going to be 60-1. So if you want to have some fun and take a shot on him, I think he's the guy to kind of take a splash on. Go ahead.
Wait, are you saying McGirt is 6-0 as in 60-1?
Am I wrong?
Yeah, he's 350-1. That's why, because it didn't make any sense. If he's 6,100, obviously he's going to be like 200-1 or more. I'm literally looking at my play money site, and I'm sure DraftKings is similar. He's 350-1.
350-1. Let's go.
He's plus 60,000. What does that mean?
Oh, so I think that's 600-1. You say
60,000? Yeah, that's 600.
600.
Yeah, so 600. That makes more. Okay, so then that's.
Wait, now it's 600-1.
This is amazing. We're already rich.
Yeah. Shit. Oh my God, this is awesome.
And by the way, DJ Trahan, and that was a very compelling argument, is 300-1. So I think I found a new first round leader and a new outright to throw a few bucks down on.
Yeah, those are my 2. So this is the week where going in before the tournament starts, like I said, take your long shots, see if you can get somebody to hit. I think the best betting strategy, if you're going to bet an outright winner, is to wait to the weekend because I just think it's an odds play. They won't change all that much unless they have a big lead. So I think you can then get those guys, make sure they're in it then, and then put your wagers in.
Right. And I usually like, if you like a top guy, I usually like them to hopefully have a below average Thursday or Friday. So instead of Scheffler being a 12-1, he becomes like a 20-1 because he's 6 shots back and there's like a decent amount of decent players ahead of him. So that's how I hit the Dustin Johnson 80-1 outright. I just waited for him to have a bad Thursday and I bet him Friday morning, and that was that.
You want to hear a funny story? So I don't remember which tournament it was, but a couple months ago over the summer, I was hot, right? I was hitting bets on golf. I'm feeling good, and I was targeting. It was something along the lines of like a 3rd round leader. So it was like, or 30 round 3rd, but just the leader after that day. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I remember waking up and being like, I forgot to put the bet in, so let me just put it in now. And it was like 7 a.m. or something. So I go and put in some guy I wanted to win. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is the odds so good for this particular golfer to win for the day? He shouldn't be this low. It just doesn't add up to me. So I'm just like, whatever. I'm just going to put some money on it. I must be missing something. I turned to find out a few minutes later, half hour later, that he triple bogeyed the first hole. I didn't know he started already. And so he started with a triple bogey, and I just bet on this guy who starts the round with the triple bogey. So I'm like, that can't be good. That's a horrible way. So I stopped paying attention all day. Turns out he recovers and actually has the lead after the round. And I just bet it. So the odd boost was just like so lucky because I was like, this odds make no sense. It'd be so bad. I'll just take it. And then he ended up recovering, and I won. And so I made a mistake, but it worked out. So
that's
incredible.
I also love the dollar bet that I just put on William McGirt at 600-1. So excited!
It's so exciting, right?
It's pretty awesome. I love it. Sia, talk to me about first round leaders. Joel wants to go watch this presidential debate for some reason.
It's so funny, by the way, because when he said 60-1 and he said he was 6,100, I was like, oh my God, this is like the DFS play of the decade, because obviously Vegas knows something that DraftKings and FanDuel don't. Anyway, okay, my first round leader plays Doc Redman 45-1, Sam Burns 50-1, Luke List 66-1, Tom Lewis 80-1, Kyle Stanley 80-1. I got to cut one of these out, but let me break some news. Are you ready for me to break some news?
Oh, hell yeah. All right. Wait, let me get my DraftKings app back open.
All right. You're good. So the breaking news, and nobody knows this yet, guys. This is like literally this. It's, what is it? 9:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am telling the world that tomorrow, the first round leader, or Thursday, the first round leader will be at 100-1, Tom Hoge. You are welcome, America. You're welcome, world. If you guys are listening to us abroad, Tom Hoge at 100-1 is your first round leader. I am telling you this on a Tuesday night at 9:10 p.m. I can see the future. Tom Hoagie is your first round leader. And those are my first round leader plays, but throw in JB Holmes too at 100-1, because why not? Put a couple bucks on JB Holmes. He's got some upside.
At that point. That is fun. I'm just looking for Tom Hoagie right now. What a great last name too. I'm more of a sub guy, but hey, to each his own. Joel, talk to me.
We've got Hogue and Hoagie. I'm definitely gonna have a lineup with both of them in it.
Yeah, you kind of have to. Eat a sandwich while you're doing it. Joel, talk to me a little bit about your first round leaders.
Yeah, so a few guys I'm going to mention here. The first round leader bet I like at now I'm in my head. Is it 80-1? Yeah, it's 80-1. JT Poston. I think he's a good golfer. I think he's going to have a really good first round. I like that play for your first round leader play. I also am going to throw a couple of shekels on Carlos Ortiz. I love him in DraftKings for the week. I don't know, just something. I just feel like he's not going to win the tournament, but like first round, something like that, I like him. So that's where I'm going to try and play him. And then the last play I'll mention for a first round leader, and I go to him a lot. He hasn't hit for me yet, but it's coming, and it's Jonathan Vegas. He's going to hit me my first round leader bet. I keep going back to it. When it hits, it's going to be glorious. So he's my last mention there. Now, there's a couple other bets I just want to touch on while we're on the topic. The first, my favorite bet of the week, it's minus 150. You got to lay a little juice, but I really like Scotty Scheffler top 20. I think he's just head and shoulders above everyone else in the field. Listen. It's hard to predict someone to win a tournament, but I do think, I think he's going to play well, and I don't see him falling out of the top 20 here. So I'm going to put some I'm going to lay the juice a little bit. I'm going to play him for the top 20 bet. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna. That's all.
Okay. Perfect. You had me suspensed, but I guess we're good. We are good. So that is our breakdown of the Sanderson Farms Championship. I might not be back next week because if this 600-1 hits, I'm going to be $600 richer. So I might go, I don't know, out to dinner maybe or something if we're even allowed here in New Jersey. But a lot of fun. Appreciate you, gentlemen. As always, Sia, where can everybody find you on the internet?
They can find me at Sia Nejad, SIANEJAD, or, if I may, tomorrow night, 8:30 on the NFL Betting Lines show, which is awesome, and the picks are awesome. So tune in, and we'll have some DFS picks for you too.
Yeah, Sia started everybody out 1-0 last week. He also had a couple other really good ones. I think he went against Josh Allen again, man. I don't know why you keep doing it to yourself. You got to stop. Just ride the lightning. He made you a lot of money too. So, I mean, shit, now it's starting to get awkward. But Joel, where can everybody find you on the internet?
At Draftmaster Flex. And that's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, you name it. That's where you find me.
I love it. I love it. And yes, one more time, windailysports.com/chat to come hang out, ask all the questions you want to Sia, to Joel, to our NFL team, to our MLB, our NBA, all of the incredible LOL's back apparently. So that's fun. You can find me at Michael Brazil 1. Thank you all for hanging out. We appreciate it. And we hope you make it a very profitable Sanderson Farms Championship with Mr. McGirt 600-1. Let's get it, boys. Let's get it.